particular synergies. This was a very small patch, and it was mainly geared towards a competitive tournament that was happening right as the patch released, just to kind of touch everything up a tiny bit. And this means two things. First off, because there's a tournament, a lot of the top players, they're not going to be experimenting to really find out what's broken OP, because they are going to just play what they've been doing before because the patch is so slight. Secondly, it also means that people aren't playing as much ladder because the set is winding down, so there isn't as much available data from like the very, very top players as there normally is this week. With that in mind, we do have something to look out for. I did play test Sett 5.5, and it was pretty interesting. So let me know down in the comments what you guys think is happening in Sett 5.5, and we'll see if one of you guys is correct. So make sure you guys are following me on my socials for more info on that. So going into the comps that we are going to be playing a lot during this next week, again, not too much has changed, so I will keep this video short. I'll pretty much just point out all the changes from last week, both here on the summary and when we get into the comps. So first off, Redeem Velkoz still, I think, is the best comp. You could also go for Lux carries as well. She's still pretty good. Dawnbringer Karma, of course, is going to be still very strong, so AP is definitely the key to victory right now, at least for the very best compositions. What that means is if you are facing a lot of Velkozes and Karmas, put in a lot of Mystics, because that is something that I've seen a lot of top players do. I think the rank 1 on NA right now, he's been splashing for Mystic in a lot of his compositions, depending on who he's facing for that game. After that, we have Nightbringer Yasuo, and that rounds out the S tier. In the A tier, Abominations with Zyra is still really, really good. I bumped that up from the B tier, and then Forgotten Draven and Mordekaiser Draven, I bumped these guys down a bit. They kind of lost a lot of power after the Rise nerfs earlier, and yeah, they dropped from S to A tier because of that. Nightbringer Aphelios, these guys really don't belong in the A tier. They're probably in between A and B tier, so they're either at the bottom of A tier or the top of B tier. Up to you where you want to put them yourself. After that, we have the B tier, which is Assassins, Skirmishers, both Jacks or reroll work. We'll get into that later. And then Kayle Knights, Hellion, Draconic Ashe, Varus, and Renewer. Pretty much when you're going for a B comp, especially these bottom guys right here, you really only want to go for them if you are forced to. I moved the Riven build, the Legionnaire build, down to the C tier. Just wasn't that happy with her recently. They nerfed her a bit too much because she wasn't that strong beforehand. She's just kind of been useful because Dawnbringers were very useful before, so you kind of had two outs if you were going for a Dawnbringer start. If you get AD, you used to go for Riven, and if you get AP, of course, you go for Karma. But they kind of just got rid of that transition by nerfing Riven, and I don't think Riven was actually like that great of a comp before, but we discussed that before if you guys watch my patch previews. So just one note, on the C tier and like the bottom of the B tier, it doesn't mean you can't win with these comps, it's just much more difficult to do so, or you need a lot of things to work in your favor compared to everything else. Doesn't mean you can't win with them, doesn't mean you can't have fun with them, but just something to keep in mind. Onto the builds now. So the Velkoz build, nothing much has changed. I just added Lux itemizations because she is pretty good right now. Even after the nerf, I still see a lot of people playing her. Obviously not as strong as before, but if we actually look at the changes, she just got a 10 mana nerf and her spell shields slightly less now. I think 20 life at 2-star, so it's still pretty good. Onto the next build, we have Dawnbringer Karma. You guys know I love this build. They did not get touched in the B patch, so go ahead and spam away. If you guys want, I have the 3-hour Karma gameplay to Masters, where I pretty much go over every single variation of Karma and provide a lot of different examples of how to play her. And of course, with this build, you could go into the famous 4 Invoker build that is super strong in the late game. Onto the next build, we have Nightbringer Yasuo. Yasuo, he is a good 3-star, 3-cost carry. Probably the only one right now, in my opinion, other than maybe Nidalee. But he's by far the best just because you can actually stabilize with a 2-star Yasuo for quite a long time. And look at this team. 1, 2, 3, 4 units in your comp are 3-cost units, which means that when you are slow rolling at level 7, there's a high chance to get a ton of 3-stars and have a lot of fun with that and gain a lot of power. Onto the next build, we have Abomination Zyra. I bumped this comp up a lot. I think I had it in like the low B tier last week, but this is definitely a real comp to be reckoned with. You itemize Zyra with AP, you itemize your Abomination. Hopefully you have an Abomination spatula so that you get the 5 Abomination buff. I've even seen some people get 2 of them so you don't have to run Callista because Callista is kind of garbage. But essentially you have so much damage that it is just kind of unstoppable, like the Abomination. And then Zyra is hitting everyone in the back. And you, of course, are running a bunch of Mystics that you could add in later. Notice here in this picture, we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units, which means you just need to add 2 additional tanks. Whatever you get to 2-star, whatever synergies you can kind of slide in and mix and match would do fine there. For the next build, we have Forgotten Draven. Again, I knocked this comp down a bit because Rise nerfs have definitely hurt them a lot. If you guys didn't know, on patch 11.13, Ryze's secondary stun got halved, and that was a lot of his power before, but he's still pretty decent. Like, the comp is still A tier, we can't really complain about that. It was definitely just way too strong before. Next up, we have Mordekaiser and Draven carry. This is very similar to the 6 Forgotten build, except this time you run 3 Forgotten and kind of flex in a bunch of random expensive units. In this case, we have Viego as the 3rd Forgotten, and then we paired up with Diana for 2 Assassins. In the tank lines, we have Mordekaiser, Taric, and Darius up front. Mordekaiser can use all sorts of items, so I don't want to put a lot of items on Mordekaiser just so you guys don't think like, oh, I have to go tank items, or oh, I have to go offensive items. You kind of want to mix and match both. Personally though, I found that Warmogs is by far the best item, and Warmogs fits in a lot of other compositions, so if you build it early, you are not forced into going a specific build. More on early game later, because I am going to be releasing a very in-depth early game guide this weekend, so if that is of interest to you, it literally runs down like everything you do before entering a game in part 1, and then in part 2 we will go through step by step every round in every stage, what to do in the early game, and it's going to simplify the game a lot for you. I can almost guarantee that, so if that is of interest to you, go ahead and subscribe below for notifications, and if you guys are enjoying what you are hearing so far, go ahead and hit the like if you are new. Going on to the next build, we have the Nightbringer Aphelios build. We recently had a guide on the Aphelios build if you want to have more info on that. It's a decent build. Again, it's not the best, it's not A or S tier, but we've kind of already written guides for everything else. So this was all that was left, so that's why we have the guide for Aphelios, but it's still a very useful comp to have up in your arsenal. Again, it's like between B and A tier, which means it is definitely playable if you get the Ranger start. It's not so much that the comp is bad, it's just more so that it is a difficult comp to play, and I've really only seen good players be able to pull out wins with it. Onto the next build, we have the B tier, which is Assassins. So Assassins, these guys are pretty odd to say the least. Not too many people go for them, but if you get them, you will do very, very well. I've seen this comp win a lot, just because a lot of comps, they don't play around Assassins. For example, Karma, a lot of people don't even surround their Karma or Protector, and if that's the case, you are going to get a lot of free wins against them. If Rangers do not hit Kindred, they have no defense mechanisms against Assassins, and Kindred is pretty hard to hit. So you have a lot of like counter matchups with Assassins, and it's kind of weird. Because Assassins are weak, all those types of compositions got to shine. However, that means if you are still playing Assassins, you still beat them, but you kind of just don't beat everything else, which is kind of the dilemma that we are in. And another dilemma is that you need 3-star 3-cost units, which are very difficult to get, and Nocturne and Katarina don't quite stabilize as easily as the Yasuo. On to the next build, we have Skirmishers. So before, everyone was playing reroll Skirmishers, and no one was really playing Jax carry. However, that has changed now. People are essentially playing either or when they are going for Skirmishers. So if you get a big potential to get a 3-star unit, go ahead and go for the Nidalee reroll with like Lee Sin and Pantheon and Kennen to support it. If not, if you're doing standard leveling, just go ahead, play Jax. If you get like a random Jax 2-star, as you're rolling down for something else. What he likes is RFC and then a Runons and then a Bloodthirster. All those items are pretty good. The great thing about this build is if you are going Skirmishers, Jax and Nidalee, they use the same items, so you're not really locked into one particular build. Onto the next comp, we have Kayle Knights. Nothing's changed there, so we'll just skip that. It's a pretty weak build, but if you get Kayle early, it is worth going for. Hellions are pretty weak as well. Teemo got nerfed a bunch, but we do have to note that in this particular patch, Hellions did get a tiny bit of a bump. If we look up here, they were able to get a small Kled buff, a small Poppy buff, and an attack speed buff as well. The real question is that enough to help them? It helps them a little bit, but I don't really think it brings them back on the map quite yet. Moving on to the next build, we have Draconic Ashe. If you get a lot of Ashes, you could go into a 4 Ranger build with Ashe. Sometimes you could play her with Abominations. It really just depends if you get Draconic on 2-1, and if you get a lot of items for Ashe. I really don't go for this build. This build should honestly be between like B and C tier. The last build we have is a Varus build. So Varus, he's so weird right now. So the comp itself, like Varus 3-star, not good. I mean, like, it's not horrible, but it's not like something you're like that happy about. However, this comp transitions into every single good comp there is in the game. So because of that, like, should they be valued very highly? Probably, but they're not really a late game composition. So look at this team. You're running Redeemed already, right? So going into Redeemed, pretty easy. You're running Ranger items, right? So you could go for Rangers as well. You're running Draven items, you could go into Draven. Every direction you could go in, Varus is just like the best item holder for this meta right now because he just holds every item that's good for every 4-cost and 5-cost carry in the game right now. So if you're not playing a 3-cost reroll, you're definitely happy if you get a Varus carry in the mid game as an item holder. But as like a 3-star Varus comp, like it's just not that great. It's okay, but it's just not something that you're super ecstatic about. But because he is so good, because he transitions into everything else, I think he does deserve a spot, probably a little higher than what I placed him here. I guess we have another build. I forgot we had this one. Coven Renewer Soraka. This one's just like one of those reroll builds. Some people use Vlad reroll also. 1-cost rerolls are actually really rare in this set, which is what I kind of miss about old sets. I don't like it when rerolls like the dominant comp in the game, but I do miss having like 1 or 2 reroll comps as options. With that in mind, if you do get perfect item Soraka or Vladimir, go ahead and go for it if you get a lot of the copies of that unit in the early game. Onto the C tier, the only thing we changed was dropping Legionnaires down here. Like the Riven build just wasn't really working out for anyone, so that's why she dropped down there. You guys can check out the other C comps on my website, bunnymuffins.lol. But that is going to be it for the comps. We have the item priority here. I didn't change this because I think this is still pretty accurate. Sword is good because it works for every composition. Rod and Tear critical for Redeemed and Dawnbringer comps. And then the attack damage items, gonna be great for all the Ranger and Draven builds. Maybe Belt should be a little higher though, because Warmogs I've seen be workable in pretty much every single composition, so maybe Belt deserves a little more love than I show here. But that is going to be it for me today. As a summary, there was a small B patch, Sett 5.5, info on that is coming very soon. So check out the description below for my socials, follow me there so you don't miss out on any announcements. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys for the early game guide tomorrow and on Sunday or Monday. It's going to be 2 different parts, but I will see you guys there. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe, and of course smash that like button. Each like is an LP I gain before the next video.